Hey everyone, it's Kai, and it's Monday, so we can look at JP tournament results over the weekend. Now, I haven't really thought of anything like a cool catch name or like title for this series. We'll call it a snapshot, but I think they all sound pretty lame, so maybe you guys, you can let me know in the comments what name I should use. Maybe I'll pick the best one, but if they all suck, unfortunate, right? There's only 2 tournament results this weekend for Standard, and that's basically what we're only going to look at, and they were held at Takasaki and Kawasaki. Now, we can do some geography lessons, all right? Let's take a look at Japan. Now, if we look at this map, we can see that Kawasaki is down here, and then Takasaki is up here. Now, Kawasaki is very close to Tokyo, so we're gonna see a lot of people. You'll definitely see people traveling to these tournaments, I think. Which is because I've seen Tokyo players travel to Yokohama for other tournaments as well. So Kawasaki is actually closer to Tokyo than Yokohama, so it's definitely gonna happen. But we can see that Takasaki is all the way here in Gunma, very far away, actually very far away. So there's gonna be probably less chances of people traveling all the way there, unless you're very dedicated, right? Unless you're very dedicated. So that can kind of tell us how different the metas can be. Now, let's go look at Kawasaki first, the one closer to Tokyo. We have first place was Bikatsuki with Bastion, then second place was Tatsu with Bruce. Top 4 was Nanasemaru with Bastion, which is, yeah, we've heard that name before, and the other top 4 was Nuki with Bastion. So, got 3 Bastions and 1 Bruce in top 4 with Bastion winning it all. There were 47 people that joined that tournament, and then the top 8 actually was 5 Bastions, 1 Nirvana, 1 Overlord, and 1 Bruce. So when we were talking about in the beginning of the format how Bruce would be the dominating deck, it just doesn't look like that's the case so far in Japan. It's basically just being Bastions, right? Just Bastions. In terms of plays, I think we've seen Tsukigami before in some of these results. We've also seen Kyon pop up a few times as well, and he was actually playing Nirvana. So yeah, the rest I haven't really seen that much. I probably forgot, right? The names everywhere, but let's go through the list. Let's go all the deck lists now. And we can look at the representation as well. 19 players being Bastion, 12 players being Bruce. Those were the top 2. Only one Bruce converted, and a lot of Bastions converted, which is insane. And 7 players playing Nirvana. Only 3 players playing Overlord, which is pretty interesting. Usually we saw a lot of Overlord players rather than Nirvana players, but it looks like that is kind of changing, which is, yeah, it's actually pretty interesting, all right? And this is singles, of course. This is singles. So let's look at some of these lists, right? So first place, we have the Bastion list, and we can see this is largely just the same list that we've been seeing all the time. So he's running 1 Rafalsos and 1 of the 20k shield, and that's it. That's pretty much it. The rest of the deck is just extremely standard. If you're a Bastion player now, yeah, good times, right? You don't need to buy any new cards, right? Second, we got the Bruce, and he is running 3 Colossus, which is, I don't know. I don't like the Colossus builds. I would much rather you change the Colossuses to Edens. And I think a lot of players have been doing that, but some players are still living and dying by the Colossus play. But we still see the 4 Hell Dives, and that's just basically pretty much standard, right? And then in third place, we got Bastion again. This is even more boring than the Bastion that we saw, because he doesn't even run any new cards except for the front and the form-up order. That's it. And lastly, we have just pretty much the same thing. I think it's the exact same deck. So actually, it might be different. Yes, this guy's running 1 more front and only 7 crit. No, only 6 crit actually. No, 7 crit. So he split it all differently. So that is the only difference. These Bastion lists basically all figured out. Nothing really to talk about, right? And then now let's look at the Takasaki list all the way out in Gunma, right? So first place, we're already seeing something different. First place was Kyon. So he actually traveled quite a bit. He was in Kawasaki, then he went to Takasaki. He topped in both. He topped 8 in Kawasaki. Now he's top 1 in Takasaki with Nirvana. Second place was Takuto with a Nirvana list as well. And then in top 4 we got Ore with Bastion, and top 4 was Ryo with Bruce. I don't think this is the Ryo that everyone knows, but Kyon is the one that we know. I think we've seen Takuto as well. But yeah, Nirvana rise up, right? Nirvana rise up. Now, there are 56 players that actually joined this tournament, and Bastion, there was 21 Bastions, there was 12 Bruces, and there were 11 Nirvanas, right? 11 Nirvanas. Then we got Seraph Snow at 5, Barrow Magnus at 2, only 2 Orphists, 1 Hexa Orb, and 1 Phantom Blaster Dragon, right? We don't even see Overlords. Where'd the Overlords go, right? Pretty crazy. And then in the top 8, we actually saw 4 Nirvanas, 3 Bruce, and 1 Bastion. So yeah, that is a huge flip. The Bastions all died. The Bruces, of course, they're actually showing their worth now. And then Nirvanas are the big surprise. The Nirvana conversion was actually pretty insane, right? So let's go look at some of these winning lists. All right, so this is the winning list here, winning Nirvana list. Basically, a lot of this is just pretty solid, I think, pretty figured out. Some interesting techs here. We see Aruna. This is basically something that's kind of just been, everyone likes it over all the new cards, right? Screw worrying about boosters. I just want my tricksters to hit something, right? 2 Tension instead, and then 3 Tokashirashi, so he's going for 3 instead of 4. We saw like 4 Tokashirashi at some point, and then people running more Virinas and feeling good about this. We actually see Valiente being totally cut, and then he's also running a weird trigger lineup, I guess. So you got the 4 fronts, you got only 5 crit, and 2 draw triggers to make up, just to get more draws, right? Which is, I guess it's kind of, I guess draws are still kind of good in this deck because you want to kind of go into your cards, get more of the cards, so you like, you know, pop off a bit harder, drop the draw trigger for a boost or something like that, or you can put it in front of it a Runa, and that can also be a nice boost as well, while your fronts, 20k shield, are just the best thing, right? So overall, I think this is a pretty cool Nirvana deck. It's really cool how Nirvana is still being kind of iterated with, still being kind of discovered. There hasn't been a super solid list yet. Every list is kind of different. We're gonna look at the second place Nirvana list and see how different that is, or if it's different at all. So we actually see actually quite a bit of divergence from the other one that we just saw, the first place one, right? So he's actually running he's got the same parts of the 3 Togashirashi, but then he's got 3 Virinas, so extra Soul Blast requirement, extra Soul Expender. There's also another card here, and this is something that I've been seeing popping up in quite a few lists as well. So this is Kizan Reiji, and it's a once per turn activate, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, and then you pick one of your opponent's card in the same column as this unit, and you retire it. So one of the things here is that it's using your extra Soul and your extra Counterblast to be able to at least do something in the game while it's still being an 8k booster, right? It doesn't need rest or anything, it just does it. So if you put it down, you're basically saying anything your opponent puts down in that column can get retired. So unless they have a way to deal with this, they have to be careful, right? They have to be very, very careful. And it also solves the problem of your Togashirashi sometimes gets excess soul, right? It actually, you saw people at the beginning, they run 4 Togashirashi. That definitely generates heaps and heaps of soul that you probably won't use, right? Even, like, here's the thing, the extra urges you have, you might not be using them on your, on like the multi-attack turns, because you just don't have a nice beefy field to bash with on a Persona Ride. Sometimes you just don't get the Persona Ride, right? But you still want to have a 20k beater on the field with a boost, because that hits numbers. There's also 20k, no, not 20, 15k shield, right? So it's like a good shield, good fat card to bash with. So you're not using the Soul Blast. So where does that Soul Blast go to? It's going to Virinas, it's going to this guy, and I guess he's also running a Runa, but he's only running 2 copies of it, right? He's only running 2 copies of it. So there's kind of less focus on that boost play, but he's basically using this as the boost that's sitting there, but also kind of locking down that entire column, right? So I guess it's an interesting tech here, but this is definitely a card that I've been seeing popping up quite a bit lately. And then with the trigger lineup, it's also very, very strange. We can count that he's not running any fronts at all, which is kind of interesting. The fronts have basically every kind of deck loves the fronts, the new 20k fronts, but he just opted not to run it. He's just running your traditional 8, looks like, I think it's 8 crit, is it? 8 crit? 8 crit, 3 draw lineup. Again, valuing the draws over the fronts, because I'm thinking, you know, the draws get you extra cards. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that, right? And then moving on, we've got the 3rd place Bastion deck. Again, it's just a very, very simple deck, right? We've seen the Wonder Fell Sauce. Maybe, I mean, we've seen decks run this and then not run this. This is, I think, recently, these last few decks we're seeing, we're only seeing it running at 1, which is interesting because either people go all in on this or just don't bother with it. And then we also have like four of the orders there. And then lastly, the Bruce. The Bruce is, we can see the return back to Eden's, right? This guy isn't running the Colossus. I do like this deck way better just because I do value Eden's just heaps, right? I love Eden's. So seeing them back, great choice. And then the Hell Dives, again, are the kind of the JP thing, with still draws in fronts. Of course, they're cutting the crits for the fronts and the draws, because they're just kind of valuing them over that, because you do make quite a lot of attacks anyway. So just making something beefy, having more defensive stuff to keep yourself alive, to kind of grind through, that's kind of, they're valuing that more. So overall, that is kind of the list. Kind of interesting, I guess. The first stuff we see was just basically just the meta, but then secondly, we see a lot of Nirvana just doing very, very well, and we're seeing some huge potential in the current format, at least. That's the thing, right? It's, at least in set 2, we thought it was already solved, but it looks like there is still a lot of things to consider, and the format itself is actually evolving quite a bit. That means there's also space for the English players to innovate the game as well, and we've seen that, you know, English players have been innovating, especially like set 1 Bruce, I think way better than the Japanese side. So there's still a lot of room for innovations to happen, and like things like Orphist as well. Orphist really rising up in the West over the East. So yeah, there's a lot of, with set 2, I can see there's a lot more space to evolve all the decks, which is a good thing. It's coming out, some new sets coming out this week, and set 2 is going to last for quite a while. It's going to last for quite a while, so hopefully we have a very, very good format still moving forward. So that's it for this week's JP tournament list. Kind of short, but hopefully we learned a lot, and then, you know, this week we'll have just the normal stuff. So see you guys in the next video, and bye.